Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started.
Before I introduce you to Stephen and we begin our interview, let me give you a date to put on your calendar. After this episode recorded, Stephen and I got together and we determined that December 14th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time would be our first community For Our Special Kids Zoom. To get the login details, you can subscribe to the newsletter, or in the next couple of days, you can go to our website and get the details. I'm super excited to have a live Q&A with Stephen on December 14th. So please join us for a great conversation. I just already know it's going to be amazing. All right, now we can get into this amazing episode. I hope you enjoy.
Well, get prepared to take some notes. I hope you're not driving. My interview with Stephen Forth is chock full of tangible takeaways. Stephen defines applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, provides the three functions of behaviors and provides examples. You'll certainly think differently about time, response, immediacy, the words positive and negative, and so much more. I am honored to have him on For Our Special Kids today, and I know you will find this time with us valuable. I hope you enjoy, and as always, let me know what you think. Stephen Forth has been helping families and schools understand the language of behavior and providing practical behavioral solutions for 20 years. During a career in theater, a parent of a child with autism realized he had a gift working with students on the spectrum while he was teaching a theater class. She invited him to be a teacher at a speech and language school in Austin, Texas, and this school developed a one-on-one instruction program called Horizon, which was one of the first school-based ABA programs using the principles of verbal behavior. Stephen became a board-certified associated behavioral analyst in 2004. In 2013, he earned a master's degree in curriculum and instruction and applied behavioral analysis from Arizona State University, and then moved to San Francisco Bay Area to be a clinical director at Gateway Learning. He currently serves several school districts and therapeutic service providers in the Bay Area with consultations and professional development workshops. Stephen spends many hours a week in meetings with parents and school districts advocating to transform the lives of students in public school settings, while he continues to help families with home behavioral change systems. Stephen deeply believes that a well-designed sensory environment creates infinite learning opportunities for all people. Stephen, let's just jump right into it because this is amazing. So let's just talk about what applied behavioral analysis is. Let's start there.
All right. Well, applied behavior analysis is this science that was created over 30, 40 years ago around the work of B.F. Skinner. And it really started off with, what they call Skinner boxes, rats in a box. And what are they going to do when you reinforce them? What are they going to do when you punish them? And then a guy named Lovaas sort of took that work and really applied it to people, Ivor Lovaas. And he did that in Southern California about 30 years ago. There's been a lot of really great research that came out of his work. There's also been a lot of bias against ABA for his techniques. Applied behavior analysis is actually the science of taking the science and applying it to real-world situations. So that is the body of work that I was trained in. If you say, am I an ABA therapist, I'm going to have to say no at this point in time. I am a person who is influenced by the work of ABA, and I use the fundamental principles that were scientifically proven. But honestly, some of those scientific principles don't rely on a compassionate human being. And I really like to make a segue between the science of ABA and, compassion of really trying to help people without doing any harm. The Hippocratic Oath is a pretty good one, and ABA is much more broad in its scope. It just says what produces results and what does not. And what I've tried to do with my work is pare down the parts of the work that produce results but do not leave good impressions on people, and really pick up the parts and grow those parts that are beneficial, so people can really understand what parts of that work they could actually apply to their lives without doing any emotional or physical damage to a human being.
And let's get into that just a little bit so people understand, because if you do say ABA to some people, you kind of get the holy crap, what? Mm-hmm. From my understanding, and I'd love some clarity on this, obviously from you, an expert, is when you say do no harm, it's because there used to be kind of a philosophy of you put a child into a room and you make them do certain things, and until they do it, they don't get anything positive. Is that kind of what? And then what type of harm would you and could you possibly see as a result of that?
Well, they weren't just waiting until like the child did something, then give them something positive. They used what we call punishment, in the situation as well, all the way from saying, no, 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 don't do that, to sometimes physical discomfort. I'm sure that's how the reputation was created. There are a whole field of ethics around it now that definitely discourage all of those type of practices. The field has grown immensely since that time. But in the end, the reputation is very hard to get away from. And people experienced it. The people who had their children in those programs, the clinicians who worked in those programs and took those methods out into the world, created an impression on society that took a lot of brilliant work and gave it all a very bad rap.
So now I understand even more. I had no idea there was the punishment aspect of it. So thank you. When you look at how you have changed that and how the science is still being used, which let's define what the science actually is when it comes to behavioral analysis.
Well, the science is based on the fundamental theory of function of behavior, that all behaviors have a fundamental function reinforcing them, the thing that keeps that behavior moving into the future. And I split it into 3 categories personally to make it very easy to understand. A lot of ABA therapists will talk about 5 functions of behavior or 6, but I try to keep it very simple because I don't like to load people down with technical terms and things like that. And also I think 3 is a number that just resonates with me personally. I like triangles, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And those functions, as I define them, are access, avoidance, and automatic. Access and avoidance are what I would call socially mediated functions. Automatic is a function that happens without anybody else's interaction involved. Automatic are all the behaviors that we do simply to make ourselves feel good. We don't need the outside world to help us with that. I can tap my foot, chew some gum, things like that. Self-stimulatory behaviors that we use to maintain our attention on speakers that may be boring us. Whatever it may be in that situation that you're doing to mediate your own internal state. So it's very contained within the system of a human being.
So nobody could see that, but I started twisting my hair. So I like twirling my hair because that used to be something, and I still do it. I catch myself and I'm like, oh, no, because I'm just trying to make myself feel good. It's like, oh, it just feels nice. Like, I just like it. I'm not doing it for anybody else, but it's so right.
It can draw attention. I could say, oh, wait a second, why are you twisting your hair? And then you become self-conscious of it. And then you wonder if I like it or if I don't like it.
Right.
So actually it's my reaction that creates those other 2 functions. I might say, hey, if you're going to twist your hair while we're talking, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And then you would get avoidance from the situation.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter what the behavior looks like. It's all about the function that it's serving for that person who's engaging in the behavior. The example I like to use is knocking on the table. I like the way the sound of knocking on the table sounds. I'm making a rhythm that I enjoy. But all of a sudden the teacher in the class goes, hey, stop that. And if I don't have really good ways of getting her attention, and I find that's effective to get her attention, then I go, wait a second, I like the way it sounds, and I'm knocking on the table to get attention. Ooh, that's 2 functions that are being filled. And if I knock on the table and really bug the teacher, she might ask me to leave, and I may not want to be in class anyway. So therefore, all 3 functions, as identified by science, have been filled with that one behavior. And it wasn't the behavior in its topography that created the function. It was the response of society to that behavior that really reinforced that function.
Okay, that's amazing. So one little behavior that you were simply doing, or this child was simply doing to feel good, then created accessibility to all three functions of behavior, which is amazing to think about. So we had a pre-conversation and I loved it. I learned so much. It was like an hour and a half little chit chat that I was like, oh my God, so lucky to talk to Stephen that long, even before the recording. So it was great. Anyways, you talked with me about this. And I said, I gave you an example of teal, and we'll talk about that later. But I just want to say for everyone that's listening, I have already started looking differently at teal's behaviors and how I respond or conversely react to those behaviors. I have so much more compassion for her now. It's really cool, Stephen. Seriously, I walked out of this room, that first conversation with you, picked her up from school, and she did something to me like swatting. So basically, we can talk about this. So she swats right now. It's not always malicious, right? Sometimes it's just an automatic behavior, but she's swatting. And I said, hey, do you have any ideas for that? And you walked me through these three the functions of behavior. And as a result, I started looking at her differently. So let's talk just openly about that. Swatting could be for...
Well, she could get proprioceptive input out of hitting you, and that could feel good to her. Most likely, that was an initial thing that happened. But when she saw your reaction to the behavior, she saw your reaction was not only, and I'm just guessing on your reaction, but most parents who get hit have a big reaction to this. But your reaction was probably big. It came in a very loud volume. It came in very fast too. And those are the things that reinforce behavior. It's size and immediacy of reaction. And so she obviously has communication challenges from what you said. But what she has found with that swatting behavior is an extremely quick access to your attention. You put your eyes on her, you may orient yourself to her, you may even hold her hand to keep her from swatting you, which gives her more proprioceptive input in the situation. So from Teal's point of view, this is a plus. We've got mom's attention, we've got proprioceptive input, we've got everything we want. She wants your attention.
Yes, she does.
Everything that she has in this world. You give her access to everything. Access to your attention leads to access to all of her toys, her games, her activities, time with you, all of that stuff. Food, primary reinforcers that are very big. You may wonder, oh, yeah, she's aggravated right now. Maybe her blood sugar's low, so I'll give her some food. And in that action, you inadvertently reinforce that thing. This comes from an impulse that we learned from being parented by generations of people who used shame, disapproval, and sometimes physical correction to correct our behaviors. Our disapproval with our children's behavior is rooted in that generational method of child rearing. Fortunately, in this point in time, those tools of especially physical corrections have been taken away from us. Our children can call CPS on us now, which I think is a very valid thing. It's a good thing. But that anger and that intimidation that preceded possible corporal punishment is still in our behavioral makeup as parents. And we can try to be really loving parents, really compassionate, attached parents. But when we get dysregulated ourselves by our kids' behavior, we have a tendency to default to what our parents did with us. Thank God for children with communication differences. They came in to teach us a better way and from my perspective, shame and disapproval can be very effective. But the kids that come to me, personally, the parents that come to me are the parents of kids who will not be corrected that way, that see through the contingencies, that don't really understand how your disapproval leads to less reinforcement for them. From their perspective, it leads to more.
So typically, a neuroatypical child you're talking about, whether you call it neurodiversity or whatever term you use, they're not associating the shame and the guilt like I did when I got that. I didn't get it a ton, but I got itchy when you were talking about it. I was like, oh, yep, I know exactly what my father used to do, bless him, to get me to calm down. Because as you can imagine, raising this would be a smidge challenging. Lots of energy. You think I'm hyper at 47? Are you kidding me? Imagine how little control I had at like 5 or 12. Oh my God, my poor parents. Anyways, I know exactly what my father did to get me to calm down. And it wasn't fun. I didn't like it. It was like death rays in that jawline. Oh boy, Dad, if you're listening, I'm sorry. But okay, so here's the thing. I mean, it's just so cool. So we're going to say it again. So access to something. So examples of that would be access to my touch, access to food, access to toys, access to my attention, avoidance, which a lot of times I'm actually seeing she is doing the swatting because she just doesn't want to do what I'm asking her to do, whether it's getting in the car seat or brushing her teeth or going on the pot. I mean, truthfully, quite frankly, I mean, I'm getting swatted a lot right now because she's also trying to figure out her independence. Yeah. She's at that age now where she's starting to realize like I have control over me. And when I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to tell you. And because she's nonverbal, it's tricky because that's her way of communicating to me. And so the automatic, you gave me an example of like stimming for a child who's an autist. How could we associate the swatting with the automatic function?
Well, really, this is kind of the realm of occupational therapists.
Okay.
This is really where I collaborate with OT a lot. And what they tell me is that it gives them proprioceptive input, which releases a lot of endorphins, hormones, things like that. And it's also very regulating for someone who has a diverse sensory experience, especially if you're hitting hard enough to have to get a bear hug. And they call it a basket hold back in the day. But, if you're really restraining a kid, the analogy I say is like, you remember Windows 98 when it froze up? When somebody gets dysregulated, it's kind of like that. So you have to reboot the system. And number one way to reboot a system is to give someone deep pressure. It really provides them a fundamentally deep reset for their automatic system, for the sensory system that interacts with the world. So when they're dysregulated, they may just need a hug, and being aggressive may be the fastest way to get that hug.
Okay. So I know you kind of blew my mind right there because first of all, there's some people that have no idea what you're talking about, Windows 98. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It ages both of us, whatever. But okay, so I know that there are parents that have autistic children. What do you do then if you realize that bear hug has worked and they're getting some beautiful response and they're connecting to your heart? And I know that these children are extremely sensitive. And so that heartbeat feels even better to them. So what do you do to then analyze it? And I know it's not correcting the child, it's correcting you as a parent. This is not about the children. It's about you. Yeah. So what do you do? Tell me some secrets, Stephen.
I wish there was a magic trick that you could do and it would stop right away. But that's the thing about behavior is, behavior is like water going down a stream. And when you choose to redirect it, you're redirecting the flow of something that is taking a natural path and using the reactions of the environment and the people around it to get what it wants. So in those situations, if the behavior is truly automatic, they're simply doing it for the sensations that they're feeling in their own body, we really try to give them other tools besides people to meet those same needs. Trampolines, heavy blankets, squeezy balls, all of these other tools. And we really, not only giving them tools, because the tools they're using right now are working very well for them, namely you, but you have to reinforce the use of those tools too. So when they choose to use those tools, when their internal motivation shifts from using you to using those tools, you have to make it very meaningful to them. Give them a lot of attention. Give them a lot of physical input. The second Teal would choose to use something besides you, then it's a great time to give her attention and say, oh, what a wonderful choice, dear. So she not only associates that feeling of getting that input from something besides you, but then she says, oh, that leads to access to my mom's attention. Now, conversely, you would have to reduce your attention when she hits you for her to notice the difference. Slow down your reaction to her hitting because her mind is recording in time, saying, oh, that was really quick, or no, that took a while to get what I want. So really what I ask parents to do, and you kind of hinted to it, but I really only work with parents because that's the other part of the equation. And that's the only part you control is your behavior. You don't control another person's behavior. You can't. It is impossible. But you can control how you react to it. And that's what I teach, is that moment in time after the behaviors occurred. What do we do to decrease the immediate reinforcement for this behavior? At the same time, we have to teach and reinforce using other things besides people as your tool when you're feeling dysregulated.
Okay, so let's make this real because I'm now confused because I have no idea what the solution would be. So she swats what I have done, and this has literally been less than a week. I mean, this has been so cool that I immediately started applying things, and I am seeing a difference. However, I don't think I'm giving her any sort of a replacement. So I basically have slowed down like you just talked about. I take away the immediate response. Sometimes, and I don't know if you would agree with this, I even like pull back. Well, I have to, because if I'm going to decrease the hitting in my face and hair and whatever. Now, mind you, she's not a malicious child. Everybody knows that. She's a magical child, but this is a behavior that she's exhibiting. And so I pull back. Now, I don't want her to feel like I'm leaving her.
Right.
So I don't leave. I just pull away and I just kind of give her eye contact like, hey, you have a choice right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if that's right because then she's getting my eye contact. And then what would I replace? Because it's things literally like you have to put on your underwear. I mean, there's no option.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I do?
Well, there's a lot of techniques, and what we're really trying to decide in any given situation is what's the function of the behavior. To me, the automatic function of this behavior has been eclipsed by the avoidant function and the access function completely, pretty much, is my feeling. You say, I look at the antecedent. What were you doing whenever she started doing the behavior? Well, that antecedent was I gave her a demand to get dressed, in the situation. Now, if you wanted to stop reinforcing the avoidant function of that behavior, you would not forget your demand while she's engaging in that behavior. A lot of parents will say, no, stop, don't. These are what I call button words. Like if I want your attention, I'll do anything you say no, stop, and don't to. So the first thing is to get those out of your vocabulary as quickly as possible. Always, if you're going to give any attention to a behavior, tell that child what they should be doing instead of that behavior. So modeling quiet hands, like folding your hands. And I would say looking away. Another tenet of my work is don't look at behavior you don't want to see in the future because your eye contact is like this lighthouse that just floods someone with reinforcement. It's like popping Skittles in their mouth.
You're so right. As soon as it came out of my mouth, it's so funny, Stephen. As soon as I said, I look into her eyes, I'm like, oh, no. I literally was like, oh my God, that's totally reinforcing her. Shoot. Okay. So modeling, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Modeling soft hands, looking away. And then I will tell you, I mean, especially like last night, like every night before bed, we do her tongue and her cheeks and all of these exercises. And she kicked and bucked and threw her hands and I pulled away. I actually did look away. I do remember that. And I said out loud, it doesn't matter, right? We're still going to do this. Mm-hmm. So the sooner we get this done, then the sooner we get to cuddle and go to bed. Is that okay?
You're on the right track.
Okay. Sure. All right.
Absolutely.
What else should I have done?
The right direction. Like all my work is a compass. It's not like, oh, you're going to do it perfectly the first time or ever, basically. But what I want you to really be thinking about is what you're reinforcing and be conscious of it. That's really it. So in that situation, you did the right thing. You pulled back. You took a break because you were uncomfortable with the way she was treating you. You actually created a boundary with your daughter from possibly the first time. And you said, hey, this is not the way I choose to be treated in this situation. I can't continue to be close to you during this. And I want to be close to you. And I know you want to be close to me. But we're going to wait until we finish this thing I've told you we need to do. And she doesn't know why she needs to do that right now. It's something a therapist has told you that would be really good to do with her. And it probably benefits her a lot. But from her point of view, it's all about her. She wants to get to the cuddle time. Forget all this therapy that you're doing with her. She wants that time with mom. And she thinks, and it has been her history, that if she engages in this behavior, you might give up. You might just shorten the thing, delay it, change it. Those are all other functions of avoidance: delay, change, and escape. are all components of it. A teacher gives work and a kid has a hard time with it and she reduces the number of problems, that behavior's been reinforced. The kid goes along because he got a delay or a reduction in the demand, but in the end, the next time he's having a problem with it, he's going to have that same behavior that gets her attention, that gets her to reduce that type of demand. So that's what is going on in that dynamic.
So that's a great example of, yeah, there's 10 math problems because you wasted 5 minutes. The whole class got 10 problems, but you only had to do 5 because we didn't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so does that mean for this child, there's 2 things that I'm thinking. One, you punish them and make them miss recess, right, to finish their 5 problems. Okay, that's one. And I mean, of course, there's a plethora of ideas, but the second thing that hit me was, would you the next time set the stage at 5?
Got it.
Okay.
Yes. So you cannot accommodate once a behavior's begun. You don't want to negotiate with a behavior you don't want to see again, is really the pure way of looking at it. Now, the practical considerations of a class and how it flows have to be taken into account. And that's why teachers and I have very interesting relationships, because I come in with this pure perspective and they come in with the reality of what it means to be a teacher in a classroom and have to deal with 30 students and not just the student I'm focused on. But in the end, you are dead on in your intervention in the future, which is accommodate the work to what you think is reasonable for that child, so you don't have to accommodate it once a behavior's occurred. It's a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. And we have a tendency to split those up. We say, what are all the things I can do to prevent the behavior? And then how do I react to the behavior once it occurs? When I write a plan, those are 2 very separate categories of the plan. And the ways to prevent the behavior from occurring, what we call antecedent situations or consequences that we set up, are the things I want you to consider first. And then if you end up having to see the behavior, here's how not to make it worse in the future. The funny part about behavior is it stops when it gets what it wants. So it gives this illusion that we've done the right thing, when in fact we've reinforced it. I really love ice cream. And I say, I want ice cream and I want ice cream, and you give me ice cream. I don't have to say it anymore. I have what I want in that situation. So when a child has a behavior and we give them what they want in that situation, they stop the behavior naturally. And we think we did the right thing. So when we turn around and tell a kid, hey, stop doing that, and they stop, that's because our attention was what they were looking for in the first place, and we also reinforced it. The example I use is a lot of times is the Walmart scenario. I say, you're sitting in a store with your 2.5-year-old, and you're standing in line behind 5 people, and there's all this beautiful candy on the shelf, and the kid, does his best to ask for candy. And you just say, no, we're going to, eat when we get home. No candy right now. Most 2-year-olds do not just accept that as the final answer. They make a bigger deal. And they start demanding more fervently that they want the candy and creating a scene, maybe screaming, maybe crying. And in that moment in time, something occurs. It's not right on a fundamental level to give that kid that candy for screaming. That would be positive reinforcement for screaming in that situation. But there are 2 things going on that you're trying to escape in that situation, that you're trying to avoid in that situation, which is the screaming, the uncomfortable nature of your child being in distress, and then all of this imagined social pressure of the people around you looking at you thinking what a bad parent you are. And those 2 things together usually encourage someone to do what I would call the wrong thing in the situation, and is just give the kid the candy, tell them to be quiet. Because the child was positively reinforced for screaming in the situation. Next time he is in that same situation, he won't even bother asking probably. He will just go straight to screaming because that's what accomplished his goal. You, in that situation, again, were negatively reinforced. Something was taken away from you for giving that candy. So there's reinforcement running both ways in that situation. He's positively reinforced and you're negatively reinforced. People misunderstand the term positive reinforcement. They think it's us saying something good after somebody does something we like. Positive only means I added something to the situation. Negative only means I removed something from the situation. Reinforcement only means what I did made that behavior more frequent in the future Punishment means it made it less frequent in the future. So you can only determine reinforcers and punishers by taking data, because everybody has a unique reinforcer profile. Some people may want praise, but some people may prefer correction because it comes in louder and clearer for them, and it hits their adrenal system in a way that they like. It becomes their language of love in some respect, like, oh wow, I like it when people get angry and correct me because I feel it more deeply than their superficial praise.
Right. Oh no. Just kind of, yeah. Now I'm thinking, oh gosh, okay, no, hold on. There's a whole nother individual involved, and that's me. So, okay, this is good. I want to go back really quick. By the way, the whole positive negative thing, great, cool, very fun. I never thought of it that way. And you're right. It's adding or reducing. So cool. I want to go back to that school scenario where you said 10 problems. What would be in that situation, like when it's happening? What do you do then? If you're not supposed to immediately reduce, what do you do?
Well, you hit on it. You've got to follow through with it.
You hit on the kid? I'm kidding.
No, you hit on the right answer is what I said. You would follow through with your demand, and if it ran into recess or whatever else it is, then yeah, that's a consequence. I think kids should go out and get their physical input in recess for sure, and maybe you would find a different time to finish that work, but that demand would never let up once you've placed it. We call it keep the demand in the business. We say, okay, once I've placed a demand and I've seen a behavior, I have to follow through with it. Otherwise, I risk reinforcing that behavior in a stronger and stronger way. I call it the difference between playing the short game and the long game. The short game is, yeah, I just take the work off his table and we're both relieved from this uncomfortable situation. The long game is, I really don't want to communicate to him that this is the way to advocate for himself. So therefore, I need to follow through with this demand this time and then accommodate the work in the future in a way that is reasonable for him. And so once you make that choice, once you make a demand in the situation, and for the record, personally, I like to place demands with the phrase, it is time to ... whatever it may be. Not I need you to, not can you, will you, would you like to. When we have an intention to really have a child follow through on situation, we want to use clear language because our kids already probably have communication issues that we're dealing with. And so when we pose something as a choice, we're trying to be nice. We're like, hey, can you come over here and do your work? We're trying to encourage them. But you can say it is time in just as nice a way. Hey, it's time to come over and do your work. You can get that same cachet from the phrase, but you're being very clear with your language. And I use what I call self-monitoring systems. And the first line of intervention that I use with most kids over 5 years old is to give the kid reinforcement on a daily basis for following it is time directions within 10 seconds of the second request. And this is a very practical thing. I create goal systems for families, with especially kids with attentional issues, things like that. And that is honestly one of my parents' favorite goal is I followed it is time directions within 10 seconds of the second request, because that addresses that avoidant function in a very clear way. We're giving kids reinforcement for hearing that phrase. They have processing time to think about the consequences of their actions, but they are very clear that that was a demand. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't something that we're trying to do it. We're trying to get cooperation. We're trying to get an internal drive for them to go along with us rather than forcing it through external means. And so that's why, all of these functional responses that I'm talking about are good. But before I even tell people what I'm telling you right now, I usually encourage parents to start a reinforcement system, get it running, get these kids really reinforced for the pro-social behaviors we're looking at, and then change the responses once the momentum's built. And I've done that for a very specific reason, because we have this phenomena called the extinction burst. When you stop reinforcing people in a way that you used to, they don't stop their behavior. They don't just all immediately go, oh, I'm not getting reinforcement for that, I will stop. They try really hard to get their reinforcement back. So it creates a spike in their behavior that's up to 3 times what it was before. And this is why parents usually try the right thing, but then throw it in the trash can. Because in the middle of the extinction burst, that child has convinced them that their technique is bad. And what my job is a parent counselor to go, hold on, I hold your hand through this process. It's okay. I know it's going to get rough for a little while, but that's what it takes to get to the other side.
I love you. Don't tell my husband.
Some heavy reinforcement.
I'm practicing. Was that within 10 seconds of your... Okay. So will you give me an example of that? I thought I heard you say within 10 seconds of the second request.
I did.
So, okay. So that's saying you're asking, or it is time to, you're not asking, it is time to come in here and sit down for dinner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you say it again?
Yeah. Well, most of my kids have auditory processing challenges.
Yes.
So what we're accounting for with that 10 seconds is the processing time. We're saying, okay, it may take him 10 seconds to really untangle what I just told him. So we're giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then we're giving an additional benefit of the doubt by holding up a peace sign and saying, hey, with the same tone, not more aggravation, not more threat, not more anything. Hey, this is the second time I'm telling you, it's time to come sit down. And then I count to 10 in my mind. I don't do this like 1, 2, 3, 4. But the kid is getting reinforced on a daily basis for doing it within 10 seconds, which transfers his motivation from external to internal. And that's what creates permanent behavior change. External change only stays in place as long as the person who's applying the external pressure is around. But if you want to create a permanent behavior change with someone, it has to come from the inside.
Okay, brilliant. It's almost like you do this for a living. Okay, so I love that. Put up the peace sign, which is a really good reminder just mentally. Okay, we are still in this peaceful situation. This is the second time I'm telling you this. It is time to come sit down. You give another 10 seconds. Let's play this out. Mm-hmm. For example, Teal maybe ignores me and continues down road A of playing with her toys. What do I do then?
Okay, well, we would have had a consultation about the environment before this, basically. And in that consultation for the environment, I would have told you, hey, go to the container store and get a bunch of containers and put all of her toys in it. And when she wants to play with something, have her request it, pull it out, and when you're done, put it up. Because when you get into a demand situation, she can just go shopping instead of listen to you with all of her toys and do everything she wants instead of you. What I coach my parents in doing is becoming really good doorways to reinforcement, reliable doorways. Most kids are reinforced by electronics, to be honest with you. That's a huge thing nowadays. And so I spend a lot of time teaching parents how to regulate the internet, but I also give the kid a goal of turning in their device when their time's up. So they have an internal reason to do it on top of we have created an external internet control. The way you do that with toys is put them in bins, clean up one theme before you play with another. That way it's not all out on the floor. Now, if she doesn't follow along with you, sooner or later she's going to want something from you. And this is where the patience comes in, like to the compassion of going, I'm just going to let her do her thing for right now. And when she comes back to me and requests something from me, I'm going to say, I hear your words, absolutely. But remember 2 hours ago when I asked you to do something? You still need to do that. It's still time to do that. And then another mechanism takes over completely where she goes, wow, this elephant never forgets what she tells me to do. I always have to go back and do it. And when you rewrite that history, you don't forget. You don't let something go that you've put in place. Then her brain understands that and speaks that language back to you and says, okay, when mom says it's time, I've got to do this. Otherwise, I'm not going to get anything else out of her today.
What happens if it's dinner based? You just let them not eat for 2 hours until they ask you for a book. And by the way, you're never allowed into my house until I get more bins, because it is a complete shit show in my house. There are toys everywhere. There's books everywhere. It's a disaster because you know what? I just don't have time. I know we all have the same amount of time in our day. Don't anyone write in about that. I get it. I have to get my bins back out and label them. Okay, so that's my major takeaway. I hate this meeting that we're doing right now. I'm not paying you.
You're not paying me.
I know this is amazing. Okay, but hold on. Okay, and then we're gonna stop because I have some really fun things to announce to our listeners about you. But here's the thing. So what happens if it's dinner time? And because that's a lot about when it happens is I say, hey, Teal, it's time to come and sit down. Please come over here and sit down. Their request, not need to do that now. We'll change the behavior of mine. But what do I do? Can't wait 2 hours.
Well, you wanted an actionable tool, and I'm going to share with you the single most effective tool that I've ever shared with anybody. You ready? Here we go. It's not magic, but it's the words first and then. When it comes down to it, first and then is super powerful. You have to be very careful with first and then because it can make a situation much worse if you use it incorrectly. You have to use it proactively rather than reactively. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times we'll get into a situation, we know what our kids like, and we can blackmail them into that thing that they don't want to do by offering them something. So, for example, she doesn't want to come to the table and she makes a scene, so to speak. And then you say, well, Teal, if you come to the table, then you can play with this game after dinner. And then all of a sudden you see a happy little girl trot over to the table and everything's all good. But what you've done is reinforce the behavior you've seen. So in all of those difficult situations, and you know when they are, you know what she doesn't want to do, be proactive with your first then before you see the behavior. After you see the behavior, it's too late. Don't use first then. But it's magical if you can anticipate what she's going to have a hard time with and set her up. Hey, Teal, she's off doing something. She's had no behavior. First, we're going to, go eat dinner, and then we're going to go play a game. You ready? Here we go. Let's go. It is the single most powerful technique there is, in my opinion, because it allows someone to understand what reinforcement is possible without engaging in the behavior and reinforcing it. So, yeah.
Okay, we have to stop here, but holy wow. I mean, thank you so, so much. I hope everybody listening is just taking tons and copious notes because I've just been writing so many things down. This is amazing. You're incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are you still standing by the two things that we talked about? First of all, one, if anyone wants to ask you questions, they can send them over to me or send them directly to you. But send them to me. We can also compile them, and then we can do another show on all of those questions or episode if we'd like to. And then the second thing is, are you still open to doing a Zoom live and letting some parents come and give you examples and talk through things?
Yeah, I am. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, you kind of caught me in my favorite thing on earth to do, plus my job. So I wouldn't mind it at all.
Okay, well, I mean, your background is in theater, so being in front of the camera is not really an option for you. That doesn't seem to be bothering you much. So, okay, I'm so excited. We are going to announce that. We'll figure out a date and we'll announce that to the group via the newsletter. So please go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. That's a shameless plug. So do that if you don't already subscribe to the newsletter. Go ahead and do that. You just click right on the newsletter tab on the website for ourspecialkids.com. Okay. One, how can people find you? We'll put all of this in the show notes, but how can they find you? And then when is your book coming out?
You got me. So people can find me at stephenforthbcba.com. And if you have trouble remembering that, you can just type in behaviordude.help. That's the easy way in case people don't know how to spell my name or remember the letters behind my name. That's the way to get in touch with me. You can also reach me at stephenforthbcba@gmail.com. So, those are the ways to get in touch with me. As far as the book goes, I wish I could give you a great answer on that. But to be honest with you, I spend a lot of my time doing what we're doing right now, and my focus is split between that and raising a 1.5-year-old.
We didn't even talk about your beautiful daughter. So you have a teenage daughter and you have a 1.5-year-old. And I would imagine that how you're interacting with your 1.5-year-old maybe has changed how you used to interact with your 19-year-old just because of those many years of experience there.
Yeah, I mean, I got into the field basically because, as you mentioned, I was a theater practitioner, and although it's a wonderful, fulfilling field, it doesn't make a lot of money. And so, I had to go get a real job when my first daughter was born, and I didn't have this background when she was born. I just did it by instinct, by the seat of my pants. She turned out okay, though. She really did. I was learning all of these things. And it's funny, I was working with the kind of the same age kids as she was as she got older through time. It was a very interesting phenomena I noticed, like my age group of, concentration just increased as she got older. So I got a lot of, good on the job experience, but I also got to see the developmental stages happen really clearly in front of my face. But this time around, I think beyond the behavior aspect of it is just this amazing ability to cherish the moment, and understand that it's going to pass really quickly, and to just like soak it up as much as humanly possible. That's really what I'm feeling at this point in time while I'm watching her develop. It's just this amazement at what I don't have to teach her, actually. Just, the gratitude is so immense.
I want to meet your family because it does sound just like they're incredible. And I do think that our children are coming in smarter. I do think they are evolving before they come in now, which is really cool. And that's a whole nother thing that we could spend some time talking about. Well, Stephen, I can't express to you I am going to express to you how much I appreciate you. Thank you for educating me on my free session here of how to be a better mom. I think what you said is kind of important for us to highlight, though, is no matter what you do, try your best, use your intuition, let your child lead. And I know that's a fine line, right? When you're talking about behavior and discipline, and I put that in quotes. But that in the end, no matter what you do, they're more powerful creatures than we are, and they're all going to be just fine. And I don't know if you subscribe to that, but I do believe that they are better than us. They're smarter than us, and they are going to keep growing without us, with or without us. So thank you. I have one final question for you, and it's our closing question. And that is, what is one word that you would use to describe a child with special needs?
Teacher.
Yes, spot on. I just set you up for that, didn't I?
You did. A teacher to us all.
Yeah.
We're at I know this is more than one word, but evolution is constantly happening. These kids are pushing us in a direction that we need to go in. I don't believe there's any mistakes. As you mentioned earlier, I believe in neurodiversity. I live in Silicon Valley, which is full of absolutely wonderful neurodiverse people. And they may not have the social skills all the time that other people do, but we've selected as a society for highly specialized people. And this is what we're getting now. People who really have deep insight into other realms. We can either hold on to the world that we've created for what we think is a neurotypical person, or we can expand our world to accommodate everyone. And that's my mission, is to make sure that, we do what we can to accommodate everyone.
That's fantastic. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.